Hello?
Hey, is this Josh?
Yes, sir, it is. Just do your best to make me sound smart because I have been drinking and partying and I know that I am not at the top of my game right now. I think I need some vitamins and some water. I sound and feel retarded. I hate people, generally. I think that a lot of people are fake. And I think that a lot of people love living lies. And I just resent them for it.
I want to hear about a couple of these bad trips that you're talking about and kind of your philosophy regarding those bad trips. Psychotropic presents Josh.
Well, I think the first bad trip that I ever had was on mushrooms. And when you mix alcohol and mushrooms, it creates a body load that really just sets you up for a bad trip. Being uncomfortable and then also kind of giving yourself a very Alice in Wonderland food poisoning can only lead to self-loathing. And generally bad trips in my experience has been an existential crisis. I'm not who I want to be. I'm not where I want to be. I'm not who I could be, especially where I am in life. So when you're confronted with that, you really get down. But it's good because you can take it one or two ways. You grow from it and realize that maybe I could grow into a person that is worthy. I had a really good trip a couple years ago. I was skating around with an eighth of mushrooms in my backpack, like a moron. For months on end, I was just waiting for the right time to take them. I closed down the bars, and it was 4 o'clock in the morning, and I thought, what a better time. Like, I felt good, my buzz was wearing off, I ate these mushrooms, and I just skated around just listening to Das Racist and going to terrible parts of the town that I probably could have gotten hurt, but I didn't. Excellent experience. That feeling lifted me up for months and months and months on end. Now, trying to recreate that, I ate some mushrooms a couple of weeks ago in the same fashion, and I hurt so bad. The body load hit me, and it was that existential crisis that I was speaking of, where I could be better. And it wasn't just that. It was also like intense visuals. I had to sit in a dark room. I was getting chills. I had to sit in the bathtub. And I suffer from depression as well. So this reoccurring thought was coming to me of, you should just kill yourself, hit fast forward on your life. And that was turned up to 10 every negative thought that I had was turned up to 10. And at a certain point, living a harsh life, sometimes harsh lessons are best learned in a harsh tone. So it was, if you don't have the courage to kill yourself, then just start living life. Become bigger than your problems. You know, why make this existence so painful? And I mean, since that, my life has actually improved. I don't think about suicide nearly as much. I try and talk myself up rather than down, trying to become bigger than my problems and my mental illness.
So you tried to recreate this really good mushroom trip that you had, and it tanked. So when you tried to recreate this, you got drunk again. I imagine it was early in the morning, and you ended up taking an eighth of mushrooms?
Very close, except when I do mushrooms, I do the shit out of them. So the way that I do it is I grind the dried mushrooms into a powder, and then I pour lemon juice on top of it, so it turns from psilocybin to psilocin, which is the actual chemical. Like, psilocybin is a precursor to psilocin, which gets you that trippy feeling. So at least 6 hours of fasting, do that, take the mushroom lemon juice cocktail, and then dump it into a glass of sugar water. Now you've got lemonade. You chug it down. In 15 minutes, you're tripping, and tripping hard, mind you, within 30. So I remembered quickly that when you do psychedelics, you're just buying a ticket to the ride. You know, you don't dictate what happens after that. Like, for instance, ayahuasca, it's inherently mean. Like, it's a mean-spirited compound. And people don't seek it out because they're doing well in life. They don't seek it out because they're multimillionaires, they own a private jet. They seek it out because they're at their wit's end and they've hit a wall and they're trying to get past it. They're trying to get over themselves, essentially, get out of their own way. And they take it, they vomit, they feel like shit. They have to come to terms with every single bad feeling they've had, the things that have been keeping them back in life. And then hopefully with the right mentality and guidance in certain cases, they become bigger than that. I suffer from depression, and I've gone to therapy, and I've tried prescription drugs, SSRIs. I've been on mood stabilizers, and nothing works. You know, at a certain point, when you just deal with it on a day-to-day basis and nothing you try helps, then you just accept it as a reality. You're cursed, in a sense, born under a bad sign, perhaps. And you're willing to do anything to break out of that. And when you really look at the mental health hierarchy, like, no one really understands how the human brain works and how to help people become better. There's such a thing as clinical depression, which means nothing that you do will ever help. They've got treatments now where ketamine is used to break you out of your depression. The only problem is the treatments cost you like $20,000. In my experience, the most fulfilling and long-lasting lessons that I've ever had were from psychedelics.
So it kind of sounds like you have treated yourself or attempted to treat your depression through psychedelics.
Well, I mean, when your back is against the wall, what else are you going to do? Yeah, absolutely. I've tried to use psychedelics to treat my depression, and to a degree they've helped.
How did you come across this idea that psychedelics could help treat depression?
Well, if it's all a mind state, we get locked into this concept of life and the way that we see things. The thing that psychedelics do is they take all the walls that you've set up around yourself and they break them away, and you're able to see yourself and your life in a 3D sort of perspective and say, oh wow, I don't have one single problem. My life isn't shit. I have 10 separate problems that if I were to address individually, then it becomes manageable. I'm getting in my own way, and that's the beauty and the perception that mushrooms or psychedelics can bring into your life. The thing is, if SSRIs are their solution for depression, we're in the 1800s of mental health. You remember when doctors prescribed orgasms to women because they were just like abused by their husbands, and they're like, they're like, you're hysterical, you just need to come, here's a vibrator. We're in that era of mental health. They're like, oh, you silly broad, you just need to come a little bit, here's a vibrator.
Can you talk a little bit about your experience about taking something, maybe an issue that you wanted to address, and then what you learned in that psychedelic state?
Well, I mean, if I'm going to speak on treating yourself, I would say seek help first. And also be very honest about your mental state, because if you have underlying mental health issues, just be aware of them, because psychedelics as well as marijuana can exacerbate and further such underlying issues as schizophrenia, etc. So seek help. Man, it's a strange question, I guess. I never came into it with a question. I was always seeking answers, and that only left me with more questions. The answers I got were they're very simple. Stop making life hard for yourself. Get out of your own way. It's about getting perspective on your life and your problems.
It's hard for a person to know that they have an issue. They just think that the world is the way that it is. And if that's a depressing place, then the world is just a depressing place. And so to decide that it might be an issue with yourself, I feel like is kind of a leap of faith. Like you said, your back is against the wall. You're pretty much going to try anything. And you've decided to self-reflect in this very personal, intimate way in hopes that something is going to happen, that something's going to change. But it still that's a leap of faith in my mind, because we can't view ourselves beyond our own consciousness.
Exactly. I listened to these lectures about Hermes Trismegistus, and he made a very interesting point. He said he's talking about magical incantations and invoking things, and he says the thing about, like, let's say transcendental meditation is that we can never know ourselves beyond what we experience. So even if we experience another entity, is that just a reflection of ourself, or is that in fact something else? And that's a question that we'll never be able to know.
I think that one of the issues with psychedelics, though, is it's not like they're going to lead you to the right answer. They're going to, I think, amplify the tools that you already have. They're going to break down the walls, but they're also going to amplify the tools that you already have. Those tools being mental capabilities. And if you're working with flawed tools, then you're liable to go down a bad path. A personal example for me, I didn't realize this until probably a year and a half ago, but I had this mushroom trip. It was the first time that I would say I went on a journey. Before this time, whenever I had taken mushrooms, I just kind of saw, the colors became enhanced, the walls would breathe, there'd be a lot of tracers, there'd be a lot of giggling, there'd be a lot of introspection, and kind of philosophizing in my head and everything, and thinking about bigger things. But in this specific mushroom trip that I experienced, it was in my early 20s. No shit, in my late teens. I actually went on a journey. I took way too many mushrooms and I started to feel sick and I got kind of scared. And so I went and laid in my bedroom with the lights off and everything. And I closed my eyes and I was, for lack of a better word, projected into this dark, rainy forest. And I saw myself huddled up against a tree. And I was naked. And I started thinking about things like, the first word ever spoken by man and all sorts of weird things. But one of the main things that I thought about was I perceive myself to be a certain way, but other people perceive me in a different way. And I think that that's accurate. I think that that's actually a profound insight for somebody who's 18, 19 years old to have. But then I took it a step further, and this is where I feel like I went wrong. But at the time, I thought it was a profound insight. Looking at myself huddled up in this dark, rainy forest, all naked against a tree, I told myself that people view me differently than I view myself. And then I went ahead and said, people view me as this long, gangly, sinewy geek. And meanwhile, I view myself as kind of like this semi-studly master of the universe or something.
Some He-Man. Some He-Man figure.
Yes, yeah, something like that. Almost like a Brad Pitt in Fight Club or some shit.
Which is the sexiest Brad Pitt has ever been.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. For friggin' sure. So I told myself, I was like, people view me as this long, sinewy, gangly geek. And then I came out of the trip and had kind of like this profound insight where people view me differently than I view myself. But then I had attached how other people view me. And honestly, it wasn't for another 12, 13 years before I realized that I have no place to assume how other people view me. That was, exactly. I have no idea how they view me unless they outright tell me how they truly view me.
But it's like, even then, that's just their perception of you. They're just telling you what they think. It's not everyone's opinion. Yeah, true. That would be like it would be like going to one person and assuming that they know what everybody else thinks. Right? That's just not the case. It's like some hand job with a mullet saying Everlast is the best band ever, and you're going, no kidding, really? Everlast? Damn, I'm just gonna. I guess so. Yes, exactly. And so what I feel like happened was I had this insight where basically I was exposed to myself, where I realized that I view myself differently than other people view me. And then that sparked in me an insecurity. And then that insecurity, which was a tool that I was using to help interpret what was going on, basically informed me that I was worried that other people viewed me as this long, gangly geek. But I skipped that I was worried, and I automatically projected it onto the rest of the world. And so I think that's where one of the dangers of using these substances for therapy lies, is you're left interpreting it for yourself, Absolutely. And I think another thing, I know I mentioned earlier, maybe before you hit record, was people love living a lie. I think that when you're honest with yourself, then from the start, I don't think that really matters, because I'm skinny and I'm tall and I'm a little gangly, and if that entered my mind, I could say yes, and if I cared to change that, I could. All that we can experience is ourself, no matter what. And we are utterly alone. And when I see people lying to themselves and portraying themselves not to be something that they are, they're only hurting themselves, and I hate it.
This episode was produced by me, Philip Johnson. All songs used can be found in the description section of this episode. If you enjoyed this week's episode, be sure to rate and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you have a story you'd like to share, or if you're interested in supporting the show, either through purchasing a Psychotropic t-shirt or becoming a patron, you can do all of this at www.psychotropicpodcast.com. Lastly, if you're interested in getting a sneak peek at upcoming episodes of Psychotropic, be sure to follow Psychotropic on Instagram at Psychotropic Podcast, all one word. Thanks again for listening, everybody. See you next time.